They said Ukraine would fall, that it was only a matter of time. Russia was simply too large, too powerful. A military giant facing a much smaller nation that many believed could not survive without constant support from the West. But the reality today tells a very different story. Ukraine has not just endured this war, it has evolved through it. What was once a country fighting for survival has transformed into a force that understands modern warfare at the highest level. Now Ukraine is no longer just receiving support. It is becoming a nation others may soon depend on. President Volodymyr Zelensky made this clear during a national address on April 13th, marking Ukrainian Arms Makers Day. For the first time in the country's history, he stated, Ukraine possesses enough capability, resilience and strength to defend itself effectively against Russian strikes. This moment didn't come overnight. It is the result of two powerful forces coming together: international support from allies, and the rapid growth of Ukraine's own defense industry. Together they have shaped Ukraine into something far more formidable than many ever expected. And Zelensky did not hold back in saying it. He reminded the world that this is not the first time Ukraine has faced attempts to destroy its independence. But this time he emphasized Ukraine stands stronger than ever, stronger than in 2014, stronger than in the previous century, and stronger than at any point in its history. To some, these words may sound like confidence, or even exaggeration. But that perception plays directly into the narrative Russia has tried to build for years, that its victory is inevitable, that Ukraine's resistance is temporary. Yet time continues to challenge that claim. Years into the conflict, the promised collapse of Ukraine has not happened. Even recently, Russia issued new ultimatums, setting deadlines for Ukraine to withdraw from key regions like Donbass. But these warnings are not new, and the outcome has remained the same. Progress has been far more difficult than expected. On the ground, the situation reveals something important. Ukraine is not just holding the line, it is actively reshaping the battlefield. In March, during a major Russian offensive expected to shift momentum, Ukraine managed to outperform Russia across several critical areas. Its air defense systems intercepted the overwhelming majority of incoming threats, drastically reducing the effectiveness of Russian strikes. At the same time, Ukraine expanded its own long-range capabilities, launching a significant number of deep strikes, increasing pressure far beyond the front lines. The scale of these operations marked a turning point. Day after day, Ukraine demonstrated consistency, coordination, and growing confidence in its strategy. Meanwhile, the human cost of the conflict continued to rise sharply. Casualties reached some of their highest levels in recent months, reflecting the intensity of ongoing operations and the difficulty of advancing in heavily fortified areas. In regions like Donetsk, progress has come at an extremely high cost, with minimal territorial change despite sustained efforts. In fact, March became one of the rare periods where no meaningful territorial gains were achieved, highlighting just how contested and difficult the battlefield has become. This is the new reality of the war. A reality where Ukraine is no longer simply defending but competing, adapting, and in many areas gaining the upper hand. And this transformation is only part of a much bigger picture. Because in the next part, we'll explore why the United States and others are now watching Ukraine more closely than ever, and how its experience in this war could influence conflicts far beyond its own borders, including rising tensions involving Iran. We'll come back to that model in just a moment. Because hidden within Zelensky's statement is something even more significant, something that directly connects Ukraine to the growing tensions involving Iran. In fact, there are two key signals. First, Ukraine is actively building partnerships in the Gulf. Second, it is expanding its presence across parts of Africa. And both developments matter more than they might seem at first glance. Following the U.S. launch of Operation Epic Fury against Iran, the situation in the region escalated rapidly. Iran responded by closing the Strait of Hormuz and deploying waves of drones toward neighboring Gulf states. Among them were the now well-known Shahed drones, systems that have already played a major role in the war in Ukraine. These are not unfamiliar weapons to Ukraine. For years, Ukraine has faced these same drones on its own territory. It has studied them, adapted to them, and most importantly, developed effective ways to stop them. One of the most important breakthroughs has been the creation of low-cost interception systems, which have significantly increased Ukraine's success rate in neutralizing incoming drone threats. And the world has taken notice. Countries in the Gulf, including Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, have moved quickly to secure long-term defense agreements with Ukraine. Their goal is simple: to strengthen their defenses against the very same threats they are now facing from Iran. But these agreements go far beyond equipment. In March, Zelensky revealed that Ukraine deployed over 200 specialists to the Middle East. These experts are not just advisors, they are actively supporting operations on the ground. According to Ukrainian leadership, they have even been involved in intercepting and destroying incoming drone threats. This marks a significant shift. Ukraine is no longer just defending its own skies. It is now contributing to the defense of other regions as well. And the expansion doesn't stop there. Reports have also pointed to Ukraine establishing a presence in Libya, potentially using it to monitor and respond to Russian-linked activities in the Mediterranean. All of this highlights a new reality. Ukraine's experience in drone warfare has become one of the most valuable assets in modern conflict, and it is using that expertise to build strategic relationships that would have been unimaginable just a few years ago. Ironically, this transformation is a direct result of the war itself. What was expected to be a short conflict has instead pushed Ukraine to innovate, adapt, and emerge as a capable military partner on the global stage. And at the center of this strategy is what Zelensky calls the G2G model, government-to-government cooperation. The idea is straightforward but powerful. First, Ukraine builds trust directly with a partner nation's government. Then, once that foundation is in place, deeper cooperation follows. Technology sharing, joint development, and defense coordination. We are now seeing this model in action across the Gulf, parts of Africa, and throughout Europe. Ukraine has the systems, it has the experience, and it is ready to share both. Now this is where the United States enters the picture. Because at this very moment, the US is facing a challenge in Iran that closely mirrors the battlefield Ukraine has already mastered. And that leads to a critical question. Why does the United States need Ukraine? Before answering that, let's quickly understand the situation. On April 13th, the US announced plans to enforce a blockade in the Strait of Hormuz after ceasefire efforts with Iran collapsed. In response to ongoing tensions, the US is attempting to limit Iran's strategic advantage in one of the world's most critical waterways. But there's a key difference in how both sides operate. Iran relies on speed, fast boats, mobility, and unpredictability. The United States relies on power, large warships, and advanced naval systems. On paper, that gives the US a clear advantage. But in reality, it also creates a vulnerability. Warships are large, visible, and difficult to reposition quickly. And when they are stationed in fixed positions as required during a blockade, they become exposed targets. This is exactly where Iran's drone strategy becomes dangerous. Shahed drones, which are relatively low cost and capable of swarm-style attacks, pose a serious threat to these high-value naval assets. And that threat is only increasing as tensions rise again. Strong warnings from US leadership signal that further escalation is not off the table, especially if American forces come under direct attack. At the same time, Gulf nations already facing similar threats have turned to Ukraine for solutions. That decision alone raises an important point. If those on the front lines of this threat are partnering with Ukraine, then perhaps the US should be paying closer attention as well. Because one of Iran's most effective tools is something Ukraine understands better than almost anyone else: the Shahed drone. And this is not a new realization. Earlier in the conflict, the US had already explored the possibility of working with Ukraine on countering these systems. According to Zelensky, there were direct requests from the American side for assistance in dealing with drone threats. Ukraine responded by offering its expertise and support. At the time, the response from Washington was cautious. But the situation has changed. Now, with renewed tensions in the Strait of Hormuz and US naval forces facing increased exposure, the importance of effective counter-drone strategies has become far more urgent. And this brings us to a clear conclusion. The United States may need Ukraine now more than ever. There are several reasons behind this, but the first is already clear. Ukraine has become one of the most experienced nations in the world when it comes to drone warfare. Years of conflict have forced it to innovate faster than anyone else. And among its most important developments is something that could reshape the battlefield entirely: interceptor drones. Systems specifically designed to detect, track, and neutralize incoming aerial threats. And today Ukraine has refined this technology to a level that few others can match. These interceptor drones may be small, but their impact is massive. Using speed, precision, and in some cases small explosive payloads, they are designed to take down much larger targets like Shahed drones. It's a classic case of agility defeating size. And Ukraine isn't just experimenting with this technology, it is producing it at scale. In January alone, Ukraine deployed around 40,000 interceptor drones. That number tells its own story. Today, Ukraine has the capacity to produce roughly 1,500 of these drones every single day, adding up to about 45,000 per month. And with additional investment, that number could climb even higher. So the first conclusion is clear. Ukraine already has both the expertise and the production capability that the United States needs right now. The third reason comes down to cost. Interceptor drones developed by Ukraine are remarkably affordable, with production costs estimated between $300 and $1,200 per unit. In the context of modern warfare, that's extremely low. Compare that to traditional systems like Patriot missiles, highly effective but costing around $4 million per launch. Using such expensive systems to destroy relatively low-cost drones creates a major imbalance. It's simply not sustainable. Even alternative solutions developed elsewhere struggle to compete. Some interceptor systems cost nearly as much as the threats they're designed to stop. Ukraine's approach flips that equation entirely. Its interceptors can be dozens of times cheaper than the drones they destroy, making them not just effective but economically efficient. Now we move to the fourth reason. Ukraine is not just producing interceptor drones, it has become a hub of military innovation. In a recent showcase, dozens of domestically developed systems were revealed, highlighting the depth of Ukraine's defense industry. These include advanced drones, missile platforms, electronic warfare tools, robotic ground systems, unmanned naval units, and mobile air defense solutions. Take a moment to consider that range. Nearly every category represents something the United States could actively use in a conflict environment like the one developing around Iran. From countering fast-moving boats, to strengthening naval defenses, to launching precision drone operations, Ukraine offers solutions across the board. This is no longer a single capability. It's an entire ecosystem of modern warfare tools. And yet perhaps the most important factor is not technological, it's strategic alignment. Because Ukraine offers something few other nations currently do: willing support. At a time when the United States is facing growing challenges, not all of its traditional allies are stepping forward in the same way. Debates, hesitation, and political considerations have slowed broader international involvement. But Ukraine's position is different. It has its own reasons. Iran's role in supplying drone technology has directly impacted Ukraine's battlefield. Thousands of attacks have been carried out using systems linked to Iranian designs. From Ukraine's perspective, this creates a clear connection and a clear motivation. Ukrainian leadership has openly supported decisive action against these threats, framing it as part of a larger effort to counter destabilizing forces. This makes Ukraine more than just a capable partner. It makes it a willing one. So when you put everything together, the picture becomes clearer. Ukraine has the solutions to counter one of the most pressing threats: the widespread use of drone warfare. It can produce those solutions at scale. It can do so at a fraction of the cost. It offers a wide range of additional military technologies, and it is ready to cooperate. Which brings us to the central question: what is stopping a deeper partnership? At the moment, the answer appears to lie in political decision-making. But as the situation continues to evolve, and as challenges in critical regions intensify, that position may not remain the same. Because beyond weapons and technology, Ukraine also brings something equally valuable: experience. It has already faced and adapted to blockades in its own waters. It has developed strategies to maintain access, sustain operations, and respond under pressure. Those lessons could prove highly relevant in places like the Strait of Hormuz. In the end, this is no longer just about one war. It's about how modern conflicts are fought, and who is best prepared to deal with them. Right now, Ukraine stands at the center of that transformation. And if the United States chooses to act on that reality, the impact could extend far beyond a single region.